Okay, we got the PPI data. It was the opposite to what we had last month. We had the CPI and hot. The market rallied, but then sold off with the PPI. This time, the market sold off with the CPI and rallied with the PPI. Talked about this at great length and detail over the last two videos that is a possibility. But the Dow still down 2.5 points. It didn't participate in the rally. Could tomorrow we have JP Morgan earnings, which is a Dow component. The S&P 500 was up 0.75%, 38.5. NASDAQ was up 1.68%. And again, NASDAQ and S&P helped by Apple and Nvidia getting a rebound. And then the Russell was up 0.70%. The VIX was down 5.63%, 0.89 to close just below 15. Yesterday we had the CPI data come in hot, month-over-month basis. The headline number came in higher than the previous reading on a year-over-year basis, and it came in hotter than expected, 3.5 opposed to 3.4. The estimate came in higher than 3.2. The estimate was hotter. The core year-over-year, 3.8 to 3.7, but it was right at that 3.8. So every single reading came in hotter than expected on the headline data and the core data. Then we get the PPI data today. That's wholesale inflation. Came in lower on a month-over-month basis, 0.2% there for the headline number, right there. Supposed to be 0.3, came in at 0.2, and again, much lower than that 0.6% that we got last time. And again, the over month last time around was very hot, and it was more cool. And then we get the year-over-year number, came in at 2.1%, higher than the 1.6. They don't have the estimate listed. Core came in at 2.8, again, higher than the 2.7. So we are seeing it continue to tick up on a year-over-year basis. The producer price index, again, had that hotter report with the CPI as well. Apple's had a significant sell-off. It got a bounce today. Now, Apple's had a significant sell-off, a double top pattern formed from the previous July peak over here. And again, while the market rallied up, obviously, for recent highs, Apple sold off. Nvidia was going sideways. It's caused NASDAQ really to go sideways now for about 7 weeks. Tomorrow's close will be 7 weeks on NASDAQ. Apple, the confirmation line of the double top is right here, and we're finding support there, and a divergence is developing. You can see it here on some of the indicators that gave us this rebound, allowing Apple to rise by 4.33%. Now, Apple, coming down to this level of support, hit the 400 period moving average and bounced off of it, forming a little bullish falling wedge. Here's the double top pattern. Here's the bullish divergence where you got it on the RSI, the MACD, and other indicators. So again, the death cross now with Apple. The 50's now crossed below the 200 period. We've broken long-term trend line in the monthly time frame. It's had a significant sell-off, so it's rebounding off of these levels of support, and that helped NASDAQ along with Nvidia. And again, that's really what the market is following now. It's really no longer, NASDAQ's really no longer following Apple, although it did help. It's been following Nvidia. And remember, there's a divergence between the two. Well, the NASDAQ recently hit new highs. Not too long ago, Apple sold off during that time. It was down here on the MACD. So watching with the rally, if the 50 remains below the 200, but again, could come up after breaking the 200 and back test it, or the broken trend line right here, above that area. But just be paying attention. S&P is trying to recover off of the 10-week moving average. NASDAQ's doing the same thing in the weekly time frame. We are getting a red awesome oscillator bar. Still may be that we go hit new highs. Sometimes you get new awesome oscillator bars that are red, and sometimes, with the first, second, or third bar, you still try to make a higher high with it, but it remains red, showing momentum is waning, and it produces a reversal signal. Again, same thing here. You got to take out this 10-week moving average. We have not been able to do it. If we do take out the 10-week and we take out the 200, and we're trying to bounce off that in the 60-minute time frame, the 20, we're trying to bounce off these levels daily, then we could see a downturn. But right here, this week's low, a little hard to see it. At this week's low, we hit that 10-week moving average, and we're bouncing off of it. So we'll be watching to see how we close. Now, going into earnings here, going to get some banks tomorrow. AP Morgan, I think Citi, and a few others. When S&P took out that 10-week moving average below, again, or I should say, that gave us a sell-off. Now we tried to rally back up and get a lower high, couldn't get above the red dots resistance and couldn't close above the cloud. So again, you got to drop below that 10-week moving average. Talking about the oscillator, the daily time frame possibly turning back up and forming a divergence on the S&P 500. NASDAQ got a bullish reversal of conditions today. The S&P did not. And I did not look at this at the very close until right now, but intraday tried to push above that 20, and guys, I said a moment ago we got above it. Well, we tried to get above it and it failed. We closed just underneath it. 10 and 20 could still get a bearish crossover, but if we rally back up, I'll be watching two levels on the S&P 500. Momentum has not turned up here, but it could get back above the 10 and 20 period moving average. You have the upper boundary of the cloud right here. Red dots of resistance. If the S&P comes up here and closes above 52.28.5, 52.28.5, and we clear the 52.35 area, then again you'll take out the red dots, you'll move above the upper cloud, you'll be above the 10 and 20, and you can go back and challenge the resistance zone, which is the peak here and the peak over here. So we'll be watching. Do we see the awesome oscillator bars go negative and break down? Again, this bar right here, look at this. We hit it again today. We hit it yesterday. We have not been able to close below that bar. This bearish engulfing bar that we got is the breakdown of the S&P recent trend line channel and the rising wedge. We have two trend lines we're watching. Here, when we broke the trend line, it was a confirmation bar, but we never got the follow through. And then here, this bar right here broke our recent minor lows, but it's not been confirmed, and it's not gotten the follow-through. We keep getting bottoming tails, and now we're attempting to rebound. Possible hammer today in the daily time frame. It's hard to see because I still have bars reflecting the trend here. But I've talked about this all this week, and last weekend I talked about possibly coming up here and forming a divergence or confirming a lower high. We see momentum flip back to bullish. Now, NASDAQ momentum has flipped back to bullish. We'll be watching to see if the S&P does it in the next few days if we can rally back up. 10-year Treasury note yield is probably going to pull back, being a doji, but I'll be watching. If we rally further and we do clear these levels, again, do we get another lower high or do we get a higher high out of the S&P 500? If we get rejection here and we still come down and break these levels, then that would be bearish, but NASDAQ did turn bullish with momentum. S&P could be right behind it. NASDAQ got above the moving averages. Crossing off the 50, got back above the 10 and 20. S&P tried to do it today, but it failed at the very, very end of the day. Came within just a fraction of closing above that 20. See a bullish reversal of conditions on S&P, and it joins the NASDAQ again. This area, these trend lines could be tested again. I've talked about this all week, talked about it over the weekend. Again, below the 20. If we get back above it, NASDAQ did, then these trend lines, you can back test this one again. You can go up and hit this upper channel line. We still have a rising wedge into a channel here. We did that. The S&P could move towards the 5,300 level and still see the RSI turn up and still get yet another reference point of a divergence. If we break down, we get confirmation, the trend lines I've been talking about, then get your reversal. But it could, and right now, again, you're mixed right now at the moment. P's momentum's still down with the bearish reversal of conditions, but NASDAQ has turned back to bullish. I told you, if Nvidia attempts to go make a new high, then NASDAQ could do it. Nvidia's been going sideways for 6 weeks, as NASDAQ's been going sideways for 7 weeks. Quickly, again, we broke down from this rising wedge. You got confirmation taking out the 20 period with that bearish engulfing. We broke down, we back tested, we went slightly above the trend line to fill the gap, and then we turned down. Now we're struggling at the 10 period moving average. If you get back above the 10, back above the 20, and again, they may get a crossover. If you get back above them, get a bullish reversal of conditions, you still may attempt to hit the upper channel line on both NASDAQ and S&P. Here on this rising wedge, we have never gotten the follow through. We had the confirmation bar, but you got to get the follow through. We have not been able to close below that bar. We've gotten bottoming tails the last 2 sessions. Now today you get potentially a possible hammer candlestick at horizontal support, so something to pay attention to. If we confirm, we break down, we get rejection off the moving averages, signals, momentum signals remain bearish, and we start seeing trending signals turn bearish, then lower. But right now, you don't have a confirmation here. That's what's required in order to get a reversal. Don't have it. The other trend line I've been watching, and again, the trend line from the more recent minor lows right here. And again, we broke it. Okay, we broke it with the bearish engulfing candlestick from the previous session there. We broke that, went up and we back tested it, halted there, back testing it, turned back down, but we're at this level of support. So again, if we get rejection here and we break this level, start moving to the 50 and breaking that, that's bearish. Well, you'll get your confirmation and follow through. But now we've had a break of the trend line. Here with this trend line, there's been no confirmation. With the other trend line, there was confirmation, but no follow through. Here we've had neither. No confirmation, no follow through, just going sideways. So again, I told you we got the bearish engulfing. Could be like what we had in July where you get a lower high and then you start breaking down. That's possible, but we've got to break this level. And so far, we have not been able to do it. We had intraday pushes below it, but you got to close below that level, and you have not been able to do it. So these trend lines are really important in my mind. Got to have confirmation and reversal, and we don't have that yet. S&P, if it tries to rally further back above the 10 period and 20 period tomorrow or into early next week, again, you still might go up and try to hit that upper channel line. This trend line, I told you sellers were going to be lurking right here. We got that black candlestick. We went 3 points above that level, and we turned back down. If the S&P gets a push back above the 10 over here and back above the momentum cloud, bullish reversal of conditions tomorrow, shorts are going to be closing their positions, are going to be trying to buy, speculating on a potential breakout to new all-time highs. So again, if we go higher, get a bullish reversal of conditions, you get that resistance zone directly overhead. S&P got above the 20 period on an intraday basis, but it didn't close there. It closed right underneath it. We did get back above the 200. And again, we bounced off the 10-week moving average. Those three moving averages are extremely important. Sell off, you got to break this 200 right here in the 60-minute time frame. Stay below it. The pring parameter go negative and remain there. See what's going on with that in just a second, but bounced, got back above the 200 here after gapping lower previously. We're coming back here and filling the gap right here. Can the momentum continue? We did break this little tiny trend line right here, but you have this other one here. We did get back above the 50. So again, just going back to fill the gap and then resume the decline, or can we build momentum? NASDAQ momentum shift today. The S&P could do it in the next day or two and follow the NASDAQ if we can put above the 200 period. And again, all about support and resistance. And again, holding, we got back above the support and resistance line, the little orange line right there. We got back above the 200, back above the 50. We reached an extreme with momentum and turned back up. Time we did that, we only got a lower high. We'll see what becomes of this move here. Jumping back above that 200, we lose it. Look out below and stay below it. We are getting back above it here. The gap halting at the cloud here. We have the traction to continue. We did get bullish hammer candlestick today in the daily time frame. So again, momentum turning back up. The 60-minute chart, but we need to get back above the trending cloud here. Bullish momentum to continue here in the 60-minute time frame. If the rally fails, we drop back below the 200 and pring, which is going negative right here. If it stays negative, then we can get the drop right here, right now. But if pring firms up right there, we hold above the 200, it buys us more time. If we just come back up to fill the gap and then we're going to get a bigger drop, you got to take out this 200 period here in the 60-minute time frame. And I keep saying it. You're above the 200, buyers are in control. You're below the 200, sellers are in control. Same thing with the 20-period moving average in the daily time frame. Same thing with the 10-week moving average in the weekly, which we're bouncing off of. I'll show you that in this video. Again, if we try to rally here off the 200, get back above the 20, then again, that upper channel line in the weekly time frame there on S&P and on NASDAQ 100. So if we drop back below the 200, remain negative here, it's bearish. We firm up here, get a bigger rally, see momentum shift back to bullish in the daily time frame, then that is going to buy S&P more time. S&P can still rise up and hit the upper channel line here, and again end up forming another reference point on divergences, and again quadruple negative divergences in many cases. And again, here we've had the triple divergence. Again, you form a quadruple negative divergence. Here, that is a strongest sell signal in technical analysis. The inflation data, we are at 0.65%. 10-year, but we got a doji. So if it pulls back, we've had this breakout here of this overhead resistance, but if it does pull back, come back to the moving averages, which again, we're about to get a golden cross. The 50 is just below the 200 there. We might get a golden cross and pull back to the moving averages or back to this trend line, back to horizontal support. If we see that happen, S&P could get a bullish reversal of conditions. We already had it today on NASDAQ, so S&P could be right behind if we try to get the traction back above the 10 and 20 period moving average on S&P daily. Same thing, the dollar is pushed higher. It also broke out above the previous level and is breaking anyways for the week, attempting to break overhead resistance in the weekly time frame. I've shown you that chart already. Don't have time to do it today, but if it turns back down, again, possibly a topping tail today, if we turn back down, yesterday's surge, just like we had on the 10-year Treasury note yield, we've already got the 50 above the 200 here. Again, it could buy the S&P and NASDAQ more time. We have not gotten confirmation, and we've gone sideways on the S&P since the break of the trend line. NASDAQ's gone sideways for 7 weeks. Again, we've seen momentum shift on the S&P here, breaking VWAP support. You got VWAP resistance directly overhead. If we turn back above that, then guess what? Bullish reversal of conditions. Momentum shifts back to bullish. If it remains bearish, you got to take out this wide range bar, the bearish engulfing bar we had a few sessions back. So far, we've not been able to do it. Momentum's still bearish, but trending signals have not turned bearish for the most part. A couple of signals, but again, we haven't seen a consistent breakdown. And if we get it, then they will. But momentum turned back up on NASDAQ. So you got to wonder if it's now going to turn back up on S&P. We got doji on the 10-year, spinning top candlestick, a little topping tail there on the dollar, and on the VIX, we got a topping tail here. So again, we're above the 200. You drop below that 200 period moving average, you start moving back to the 50. Again, there's still the possibility we try to fill that gap. We don't have to. We could do it at a later date. The gap with the pandemic there, we never filled it. It wasn't until a long time until we did. So does this gap fill right here? Again, the 50's got to get above the 200, and then we've got to get price holding above both. Right now, we're getting a topping tail in this consolidation at the trend line of resistance in the weekly time frame. Stalling at this trend line right here, and again, if we do with the VIX, down with the 10-year, again, it buys the stock market more time because we have not had confirmation and a follow-through with the break of our trend lines on the S&P 500. This is the NAAIM exposure. It shows what active managers are doing. And again, reached extremes, formed a divergence, and we started to sell off. We're rebounding off the 10-week moving average on the S&P 500 weekly chart. Again, we could still go higher. Look at this over here. Formed a divergence right here, began to sell off, and then we went back up and we moved just slightly above that level. Just slightly above that level. Oh, I didn't draw that straight. Let me get that straight there. We moved just slightly above that level and then turned. Do we get something like that? Possibly. To go back up and slam into the channel line. Again, we have not been able to break support or the 10-week moving average. Got to do that if we're going to sell off. Now, if that scenario happens, where we do get this divergence that looks something like this, like over here, tried to get one here, but we only went sideways. But if the divergence forms, we still may hit that upper channel line in the weekly time frame on both NASDAQ and S&P. That momentum shift bearish, now turning back to bullish on NASDAQ, but we haven't been able to break down. NASDAQ's bouncing off the 50-period moving average and horizontal support. S&P's bouncing off horizontal support. Got to break those levels, and we have not been able to do it. That's a sign of strength. Now, with the S&P, again, we've seen momentum shift on a lot of signals. The trend has not officially changed yet. We're not taking out support here. The swing trend line is turned red, but again, just reflecting either we're going sideways or down. Got to take out this level here. We're bouncing off of it. Momentum coming here to the center line, and again, could turn back up if we try to rebound. If it breaks and we break this level, then that's going to be bearish. So again, take out these horizontal levels of support and fill in the gap right now and get rejection. Remember, the Dow still has a couple of gaps now that it could still fill. Dow makes a move to go fill those gaps. P might try to rally up towards the trend lines I'm talking about, the rising wedge or the upper channel. Still hanging in there here. Bounce is bullish, which we're trying to get right now. A break is bearish. Now again, just like NASDAQ, we have a triangle that is developing here. So if we get an upward resolution, we could try to challenge the resistance zone. Again, critical mass going sideways. It turned red. It's still red, but we got above the critical mass line, and it's just showing we're going sideways. If we get above it and it starts turning back to blue, then again, rally to some of the trend lines that I've talked about. Triangles can be continuation or reversal patterns. Momentum shifted today on NASDAQ, so it very well could shift by tomorrow or Monday with the S&P 500. And while some of my momentum signals have turned bearish and many still remain that way, trending signals still remain bullish. We're not taking out the level of support. So momentum remains bearish and we break down some of the trending signals and we can get a reversal, confirm the break of the trend lines. If we bounce, we don't confirm the break of those trend lines, go up and hit the upper channel line once again on the weekly chart. Move towards 5,300. Keep in mind the Dow has not filled these gaps. The one back over here that we had, the Dow never filled it. S&P and NASDAQ filled that gap. The Dow did not. Possible if we do rally back up, NASDAQ and S&P move to a new high, but the Dow does not if we have a 5-leg push lower. But you've completed divergences here, 60-minute time frame. And again, the Dow here coming up to this trend line. I've been talking about this trend line here for a couple of days. The Dow tomorrow with JP Morgan, or if the banks rally or so forth, we could try to come back and fill this gap, or this one back over here. It's possible the Dow has peaked. It's down today while the S&P and NASDAQ were up. So keep your eye on the Dow. It did get a death cross. If we get back above the 200 period and the trending cloud here and try to fill these gaps, then momentum will likely turn back to bullish with the Dow and probably it turned bullish with S&P. NASDAQ already has. Now the S&P has dropped about 2.5% from the highs when we hit peak and then formed the little double top pattern here on the intraday charts. But we've come back to critical mass here in our critical mass cloud. And while we're seeing some distribution, that's what these signals are showing. The dip is being bought, and we're seeing that with the bottoming tails. That's what these little blue dots are telling me, that we are seeing the buy the dip crowd come in. And again, we could even rally to a new high and still see distribution. But critical mass oscillator in negative territory. If it turns back up here, again, you could see, like on the RSI and other indicators of the MACD, you could see another reference point of a divergence form back up to the trend lines that I'm talking about in the weekly time frame and daily time frame. The channel, when you both the weekly and the daily channel. We're going to we got to trigger a sell signal like over here, or the buy signal over here. We don't have that yet. Just have warning signs of a potential coming because there is distribution, and that's what these signals are showing us. Showing us that distribution and liquidations are taking place. That's taking place as into the rally. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want. I don't have any sponsors. That's that you help support the channel and do what you can. Please consider helping out today. I do need your help at this time. We have distribution taking place on the S&P 500. It's still make a new high, but we do have evidence of distribution in the weekly time frame, in the daily time frame. I've been warning you, NASDAQ's been going sideways. It needed to see a breakdown out of the trading range and for momentum to remain bearish if we were going to go lower immediately. I've been talking about all week these potential divergences if we get an upward resolution. If NASDAQ goes to that upper boundary that I've been talking about all week, and over the weekend I talked about that upper boundary in the channel. This is a consolidation because, again, with this peak over here, we never did reach that upper channel line. Still go up and reach that level. Now, with the rally today, helped with Nvidia being up 4.11%, to rebound again at horizontal support, just like NASDAQ is doing. NASDAQ having gone sideways for nearly 7 weeks, now getting a bullish reversal of conditions. So I told you, if that happened, we're going to see back above the 10 and 20 period moving average, back above the cloud. Shorts are going to cover. And then if we go to a higher high above the resistance zone here and here, see more short covering if we can clear that level. This is where all the stops are overhead. Halted at the red dots of resistance, but we cleared the cloud, getting a green bar on the oscillator. It did go negative yesterday. It could turn back up, and we could still see a divergence and an attempt to move towards that upper boundary. But we know that distribution is taking place on the NASDAQ. You see the distribution and the sideways move in the weekly time frame. It's probably best seen here, but again, we've had the rally, the sell-off, the rally, the sell-off. And again, if we break out of this trading range, there is the possibility of going up and hitting that upper boundary. You do have a triangle. We halted right at that trend line today. You do have a potential triangle similar to what Bitcoin did. And Bitcoin broke out of its triangle already. Again, the weekly chart, we could still go up and hit that upper channel line. I'll show you in just a moment, but we've been going sideways for 7 straight weeks. Do we attempt to break out? Bullish reversal of conditions today in the daily time frame. The bulls are back in the driver's seat as we've gone sideways. We've gone back and forth from bullish to bearish to bullish to bearish to bullish. And do we break up above this resistance zone, the high over here from the previous week and the high over here from about 4 weeks ago? So if you break above that, you have the upper channel line. If we get an upward resolution to the little consolidation and possibly this little symmetrical triangle right here, we can go up and hit this upper boundary right here going into earnings season here. Again, I've been talking about this consolidation for a year sell-off. We needed to break down. Bearish reversal of conditions continue and trigger other sell signals. That has not happened. We've turned back up. We're in the trading range. So now if we get an upward resolution, we can go up here. If we set up another lower high, you got to break down. You got to break down below these lows over here, down from the triangle to break horizontal support with the downward resolution. So again, while we have divergences, I've told you we could still move to a new high. Over here, we had a divergence and we went back up and we tested the high and we got a lower high. S&P made a higher high at that time, but it didn't stop a rally from taking place initially after we got the bearish crossover. Well, we're getting crossovers, but this bar right here, we never did quite reach this trend line. We did over here. I connected this peak over here and this peak over here, and we didn't quite reach it there. We still may do it. The triangle gets an upward resolution. Take a look at the divergences, though, the distribution as well. These divergences just all over the place. The waiting game. Do we get a lower high and we peaked previously hitting that trend line and then break down, or do we go up and hit this upper channel line and then turn down and see these divergences play out? It's just all over the place on NASDAQ. And you can see, again, the signals, most of them have already gotten the rollover. We're trying to get it this week and up here. So all of them but 2 have gotten the rollover. Still doesn't mean that we can't go up and hit this upper channel line. Now, with our first peak right here, we did form a divergence on the RSI. We moved slightly higher, formed another reference point, and so you've got these divergences. You still may get another reference point. Take a look at the RSI, and also take a look again at the stochastic, the multiple point divergences that are developing here, and on the rate of change. Get an upward resolution to the consolidation. You still may get, again, the reference point. And again, we are seeing the bullish reversal of conditions today. Momentum is turning back up for NASDAQ right now in the daily time frame. Up the NASDAQ weekly chart, you can see the points of accumulation and distribution that have been associated with tops and bottoms. This is the weekly chart, so this is the previous top over here, and short-term peaks and bottoms here. The accumulation at the bottom here for NASDAQ that led to the reversal, reaffirming that there in October of 2023 after the July sell-off. But now we're getting distribution as we've been going sideways for weeks, and we can't still make a new high, which again, if we do, a final climax high, but we are going sideways, and the consolidation can break up or down. We've got those negative divergences all over the place in the weekly time frame, and if we do rally directly overhead, you have the monthly trend line, which is the log scaling trend line, which is up at that upper channel area. So if we do attempt to get an upward resolution, signals have now turned back to bullish as far as the momentum for a bullish reversal of conditions for the NASDAQ. Do attempt to rally this area right here. If we come up to it, you're going to be slamming up into monthly trend line with the log scaling, which we're just under the trend line on NASDAQ for the log scaling there. But with the linear scaling, we've overthrown it just a little bit. You have these larger negative divergences with the RSI and the MACD in the monthly time frame. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ is slightly overthrowing the trend line with the linear scaling. The linear scaling right here, and my trend line moved slightly on me, but we're just slightly overthrowing that level. Two trend lines I'm watching, one with log, one with linear. These trend lines on the S&P, on NASDAQ and S&P, by the way. S&P turned down in 2021, November 2021. It was off of this upper channel line right here from these lows back over here. All I've done is I've connected this point with this point here, and you have that directly overhead or with our linear scaling right at it and slightly overthrowing it. So just two trend lines I'm paying attention to as we go sideways now on NASDAQ for 7 weeks. Signals are hanging in there for NASDAQ. Swing trend line went from green to green, back to red, now back to green, just showing we're going sideways here for 7 weeks. Started to go negative here, turned right back up, started to go negative here, turning right back up with a bullish reversal of conditions, momentum shifting back up, being the trending signal bullish. So if we see the awesome oscillator go back into the positive region, again, you could have an upward resolution. If we clear the red dots of resistance, we've already cleared the cloud. You're getting a bullish reversal of conditions. Momentum is turning back up. So the possibility of going up and hitting the upper boundary still could happen. The upper boundary of our channel that I've been showing you on the weekly chart all week and last week. In the weekly time frame, NASDAQ's getting red awesome oscillator bars, so we know that momentum is starting to wane. When we started seeing that happen, momentum began to wane, and eventually we turned down. But we're not taking out the 10-week moving average with the sideways move. You got to take out the 10-week and see the bearish reversal of conditions here in the weekly time frame. So again, oftentimes you'll get some of these red bars still move higher, clearly forming a negative divergence with the previous peak there in July. Might go back up and hit the upper channel line, connecting those two peaks. Can't take out the 10-week moving average. We tried to take it out last week. We bounced off of it 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago again, but we haven't been able to take it out. That's what's necessary if we're going to get a reversal and break down below the lower end of the trading range, getting a reversal of conditions here in the weekly time frame, and we have not been able to do it. You can't bust them down. You could try to bust them back up. That's not going to make the negative divergences go away. Momentum shifted back to bullish today for the NASDAQ. Again, we got a bullish reversal of conditions today in the daily time frame. That means momentum's now shifting back to bullish. Now we're going to see shorts closing their positions. That was the signal today to do that. See more short covering if we move above the overhead resistance. Again, we've been going sideways, but that's now with a bounce here today, that's now given us this triangle. We're bouncing off of these lows, getting another higher low here. So you've got this triangle, symmetrical triangle, or this large rectangle if we see the breakout fail. But previously at this trend line, this is where the sellers were going to be lurking right there and right there, these levels right here, and I tried a short position right there. We're not breaking down. Momentum's now shifting back to bullish. I've closed that out, and now it's the waiting game. What happens? Do we go up to one of these trend lines right here, or do we get a downward resolution of the triangle? Let me be clear. A break above this level right here, above this 18,400 area, is bullish for the short term to go to one of these trend lines. Okay, the trend line here, or again, these trend lines, these levels here connect back the July peak, and we never did reach it right here with this rally right here. We still may attempt to do it with this rally right here. So again, momentum is flipping back to bullish, but the triangle can break in either direction. But I'm just telling you, momentum's back to bullish as of today. You get an upward resolution of breakout of the triangle and a breakout of overhead resistance, then we're going over here, and you're going to see more covering. You're going to see a short squeeze. The divergences in the weekly time frame will not play out. They will. We've been going sideways, and again, Sometimes you get those red awesome oscillator bars, you go up, you make a new high, and then you turn. But the momentum signal has turned back to bullish until it turns back to bearish. You can go to higher levels and get an upward resolution of the triangle and the rectangle. NASDAQ was up 296 points today, up 1.65%. I've been talking about this trend line right here, and I told you we got at the 50-period moving average yesterday a hollow red candlestick. That's now forming the triangle that I've been talking about. And again, we could see an upward resolution of that triangle or a downward resolution, but we're back above the 10, back above the 20, bouncing off of the 50. This sideways move, and again, there could be an upward resolution. We could still see the MACD come up and form another reference point of a divergence and still make a lower high, multiple points of divergence. But again, I repeat, momentum is back to bullish, not break horizontal support. While momentum signals turn bearish, the trending signals have been mostly still bullish for NASDAQ and now turning back to bullish and again getting above this previous broken trend line. So got the trend line here from July, which is the upper boundary of the channel. You've got the trend line, again, that connects there. And this trend line on the 60-minute chart, and I misspoke. I said it connected there. It connected back to this level right here. Pardon me. Never did reach it there. We still may reach these levels or the trend line here from this peak right there. RSI's had the diversion so far. It's just taken us back to the 50-period moving average and not taking out horizontal support. I'll be watching. Do we get a lower high and break that support, or do we another reference point of a divergence? Come back, we break horizontal support, we break this trend line on the NASDAQ, break the 50 period, that's going to be bearish. And yesterday I talked about that hollow red candlestick at the 50 period moving average, and again, that's really now formed this triangle here as we're bouncing in that level. So again, will we get an upward resolution to the triangle or a downward resolution? Triangles can break either way, but if we do go higher, you get that upper boundary of the channel in the weekly time frame that I've been talking about.